Doctor. I'm a Time Lord. I'm from the planet Gallifrey in the constellation of Castorberus.
I hope the ears are a bit less conspicuous this time.
You might be a doctor, but I am.
I'm a doctor, but probably not the one you expect.
Absolutely fantastic.
All of time and space, everything that ever happened or ever will. Where do you want to start?
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Bigger on the Inside, the New Who Doctor Who Watch Along podcast. With me again is Harry Murdoch. Hi, Harry.
Hiya.
So this week we're talking about probably one of the most critically acclaimed episodes of Series 1, if not one of the most critically acclaimed episodes of the 2005 Russell T. Davies era anyway. I think it's Father's Day. Oh, sorry. What's the episode, Harry?
It is Father's Day by Paul Cornell.
Yeah, I looked at some other stuff Paul Cornell's done, and to say that this episode's so well received, he only returned once more to Doctor Who. Well, to TV Doctor Who. He returned and did Human Nature Family of Blood.
Oh, that's a good one too.
Yeah, it definitely seems like the ones that are most remembered and most loved, Father's Day and that two-parter with Tennant, they're often the ones that people seem to talk about the most when they talk about their favourite episodes. I know my mother's favourite episode of Tennant is the Family Blood story.
No, yeah, that's a really good one, yeah. And this one, again, is really strong. I actually have a funny relationship with Father's Day, which is that although it's not the first Doctor Who episode I saw as a kid, I first started with Series 2.
Yeah.
On repeats, Father's Day was the very first episode with Christopher Eccleston that I saw.
Oh, well, really? So do you remember you first watching this episode?
Yeah, I remember watching it. I think it was a repeat. Well, I mean, I could tell it was a repeat because it was Christopher Eccleston, and I knew that he'd played the Doctor before David Tennant. Even though I hadn't seen Regeneration, I remember my family kind of explaining to me the concept of Doctor Who and Regeneration, so I kind of, went along with it.
Yeah. So, looking online, a lot of people are really fond of this episode. It's definitely an episode that people cherish for different reasons. What did you think of it when first watching today or yesterday, whenever you watched it?
Well, I remember when I first watched it, I'm very grateful that the BBC decided to repeat this episode and that I got to see it because I feel like it's kind of, if you're going to get into Doctor Who, it's kind of an essential one to view. Even if you're not starting with Series 1, you kind of need to see it as an explanation for why, despite the fact that these characters can time travel, they don't go around changing history for the better.
Yeah, because that was one thing that I noticed straight away when he was like, when he's like, okay, be careful what you wish for. And I was like, why are you going there? Even before you get there, he should have known the Doctor should have known what was going to go down when they got there.
Yeah, he should have probably laid out some clearer ground rules of you can't interfere with history, you can't save his life, you can't change a fixed point in time. But I guess it's kind of a thing where by that point, the Doctor had built up a certain level of trust and respect for Rose, and that in his mind, he expected her to act more responsibly than she did. And to Rose's defense as well, it wasn't. He never explained to her that doing what she did could have massive consequences.
No, he doesn't, does he?
No.
You sort of think maybe after the long game where they go away with the legendary Adam Mitchell.
Best companion.
You sort of think, because he has so much faith in her in that episode, that you do obviously just assume that she knows everything by now. I watched Russell T. Davies, and he was saying, we've seen that Rose is basically a great companion for the Doctor. She's a great fit, but even she gets stuff wrong. But when she does get stuff wrong, it's on like a catastrophic level. So what did you think? I felt like the character of Rose, we've seen a lot of her character over the last 7 episodes, but I definitely think this is one where those 7 episodes all came together and we saw a lot of Billy/Rose in this episode.
Yeah, this is definitely the episode where Rose as a character is, as far as we've seen so far, at her kind of most emotionally kind of vulnerable and exposed. Yeah. And kind of, especially the scenes with her and reacting to her family and them not being the kind of perfect picture she painted in her head, and kind of seeing how much it kind of hurts her to kind of see her mother kind of disregard her and be rude to her. And yeah, she really goes through a lot as a character, and Billy Piper really does a great job kind of hitting those beats in a very kind of truthful and emotional way.
Yeah, I found the scene where they arrive at the church and Jackie just instantly starts rinsing Pete Tyler. She's like, "Who's this girl? Where have you been? You almost got killed. You're a bad father to your daughter. She needs someone properly," and all this stuff. And you have grown-up Rose, Billy, watching the scene unfold, who, Jackie has always told her that her father was a hero, and she's obviously been lying, because why would you want to paint a negative picture of someone's dead father? So she's been lying, and you can see it unravel on her face that, this person who she's always idolized is a bit of a numbnut, really.
And it's very smart that, despite it being demonstrated in this episode, through time travel, really what it's showing is something that I imagine a lot of people growing up and a lot of children and families could relate to, which is, as a child, you do kind of perceive your family to be this perfect family unit where everyone always gets along, everyone always kind of loves each other with kind of no cracks, no wrinkles. But as you grow older, you kind of start to see that the world isn't as perfect as you'd like it to be. And there's nothing, wrong with that. You've even seen the episode that in the next scene, Pete and Jackie make up.
Yeah.
And, everything is, fine again. But it is kind of quite a sobering thing to show, and quite a mature thing for a show with a large audience of children to kind of show that kind of things aren't always perfect. People argue, loved ones argue, but that's okay. That doesn't mean they don't love each other.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Does Pete Tyler Sorry, go on.
I mean, it's something which I'd forgotten quite how little punches this episode kind of pulled in regards to the family dynamic and the family drama. And I kind of really have to respect, both Davis and Cornell for being that truthful and being that honest in its depiction.
No, I agree. Does Pete Tyler fancy his daughter a little bit at one point?
I mean, he's not aware. And Rose, kind of says in the way that, phrases it in a way that kind of has to be phrased for PG TV.
Yeah.
That, like, don't even go there. I don't want to think of you going there.
Do you know that he perhaps has been maybe not sleeping around, but slightly clumsy?
Well, they mentioned the girl on the train with the duffel coats or something.
Yes, where he's looking for his ticket, isn't he? And apparently lots of duffel coats fall on top of him, and they were looking for his train ticket or something like that.
Yeah. Something very vague that could go both ways.
Yeah, because he does say at one point, he just says, "Jackie, sometimes a duffel coat is just a duffel coat." I really liked the episode. I really did like the character of Pete. Obviously, spoilers, we see him series 2 in a new sort of different way. But I really liked that he's like just that character. I really enjoyed him, and it's a shame that we were able to see more of his character throughout this first series, I feel. When he's looking out the window at the car going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, there's that realization, and throughout this episode, you know, he starts off, like I said, as a numbnut, and by the end of it, he's the hero that, you know, Rose had always imagined him to be. I would have really liked to have seen him do more like heroic stuff.
Kind of see, I mean, I guess the thing of is a question of if we were to see him more, whether he would be kind of that hero that he was in his final moments. It's because obviously there's the scene where he asks Rose what, you know, their family's like in the future and how she grew up and if he was a good dad. And Rose is kind of telling him all these kind of, you know, wonderful things like, you know, you read me a story every night, you would take me to the countryside for picnics. Yeah. And even before he says, that's not me, you can kind of see on his face kind of this kind of realization and this coming to terms that, you know, both that he himself, that he's recognizing that's not him, and that he has had made a lot of feelings as a father. And also there's him, and this is something which I think the episode does really well, kind of him, you know, coming to terms with the fact that he should be dead, that he's kind of currently on borrowed time.
He works it out very well.
Yeah. I mean, I guess kind of it kind of shows that while he's a bit of a numb, that he is not a complete idiot. He, you know, puts the pieces together, you know, seeing that, realizing this is his daughter from the future, that she's returned to a rather unremarkable time, other than the fact that she saved his life. Then with that description, it kind of shows that there is more to him than just being this kind of useless Del Boy type as he's described.
Yeah, I picked up on that reference. I wasn't sure about that at first. I was like, Del Boy, I don't know how long Only Fools and Horses been on, but by this point, by 1987, Only Fools and Horses had been on the TV for 6 years, so I think it had managed to cement itself in pop culture by that point.
How long did Only Fools run for?
Oh, good question. I think it ran for 6 seasons. 6 or 7 seasons. I think it ran for 7 seasons.
Right.
Not consecutively year after year. I think it had a couple of gaps. I think the 7th series ended around the early 90s, and there was a series of specials throughout the 90s. Then it came back in 2002 until 2005, I think.
Yeah. So around the time of this episode, in the late 80s, it was very much something that the public was very caught up in, and that it was kind of the peak of its popularity. Yeah. I like that. I liked all the obviously when this came out, 2000 was it 2005? Yeah, of course it was. Of course it's 2005. There is only the time it's depicting is only it's only, you know, what is it, 18 years ago?
Yeah, it's not long. It's only around 20 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of refreshing to see the show traveling back in time, but not too far. It's not like a complete overhaul of scenery. It's a much more kind of subtle, and because it's much more subtle, it's kind of in a way a more kind of truthful feeling depiction of the 80s that we would perhaps see today, especially with stuff like In the Car, playing songs such as Rick Astley, Never Gonna Give You Up, and there was another one I can't remember.
Yeah, I noticed as soon as they stepped out the TARDIS to let us know it was the 1980s, they played Never Gonna Say Goodbye. As soon as they stepped out the TARDIS, I was like, okay, we're in the 80s. But it was really noticeable the song was playing, that I thought, oh, we're going to pan across and there's going to be someone walking around with a speaker or a car playing it. But no, it's just the music. Like, for some reason in the 1980s, you would walk out your house and you would hear pop, and you would hear, you know, all 80s bands escaping my mind. You would hear the Human League and all these different types of bands just leaving the house.
Oh, I've just realised something clever they were doing with that song.
Oh yeah, I've done it as well. Yeah,
lyrics, you know, never gonna make you cry, never gonna say goodbye, never gonna tell a lie and hurt you, never gonna run around and desert you. Oh my god, Rick Astley's Never Gonna Give You Up. Like, the context of that song plays directly into the reason why Rose is there.
Yeah, never picked up on that.
Oh.
The Doctor is. We can get into. There's one thing I do want to touch on, so do remind me about Christopher Eccleston's love for this episode. But before I get to that, he has a really different, strange character arc as well. We see different emotions from him in this episode. One thing that I did notice at the start is when Rose is telling him about her dad, he says, "Where's this come from all of a sudden?" But surely, why would he expect her to constantly be talking about her dead dad?
No, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's strange. I mean, it could be that it could be the same thing as later when he has a go at Rose, where he's kind of maybe from the moment she mentions him, he's suspicious that she wants to kind of abuse time travel for her own gain, and especially following the episode The Long Game, in which the best companion, Adam, very explicitly abuses the power of time travel for his own benefit.
Yeah.
Maybe because that's on his mind, kind of as a follow-on from that, he's kind of suspicious that Rose is thinking of doing something similar.
Yeah, you do get the impression that he sort of feels like he's maybe being used. Because he says, doesn't he? He says, when I told you this could travel in space, you weren't interested. But as soon as I mentioned it was a time machine, you were straight on board.
Yeah.
So it does maybe make you think that maybe, even though she says this wasn't some sort of plan, the idea's obviously been there for quite a while.
Yeah, it's obviously a thought that possibly since the mention of time travel, it's something that's kind of thought that's been growing and growing in her mind.
Yeah. He sort of comes across as a slightly jealous boyfriend, I found, the Doctor, especially that scene in the flat where she's like, I know you're not going to leave. I know you're just going to stand around outside waiting for me to come back. He's like, no, I'm not. I'm going to go.
Yeah, that's definitely a thing. Like, as the episodes have gone on, that kind of the romantic implications of their relationship and kind of the whole thing of them having a lover's tiff and them kind of being quite flirtatious seems to become more and more apparent as the series has gone on. To the point where Rose in the episode actually says, why does everyone keep asking if he's my boyfriend?
Yeah, she does, doesn't she? Yeah. One thing about Rose in that scene as well is she's quite emotionally blind, isn't she, Rose Tyler? That whole
In
scene,
what respect?
She's going around going, oh, look at all these inventions my dad made. It's water and energy drinks. And the Doctor's just stood there, like, giving her devil eyes as if to say, what the flip have you just done? And she just can't see it at all.
Yeah, she can't read the room.
Yeah. And what is it she says? Doesn't she thinks he's annoyed about something else, but I can't remember what.
She thinks he's annoyed at Pete calling him her boyfriend.
That's it, yeah.
I mean, I guess it's a thing where I suppose so far, that for, the vast majority of most episodes, the Doctor and Rose have been on the same page, have been quite in tune. And so I suppose she just kind of has gotten to a point where she feels like a certain level of just kind of very comfortable and at ease around the Doctor, to the fact where she is kind of, taking him for granted, similarly to the way that she's taking the time travel for granted.
Yeah, no, I agree. I also like the fact every death that we see in the episode, apart from the ones where we actually see them killed, all have to be holding some sort of object that they can drop once they've died, so that we know they're dead.
Oh, yeah. Gotta get past those sensors.
Yeah, I did notice that this is, I think, even though this episode is really good, out of the ones we've watched so far, I think it's the most dated. It feels like a 2005 TV movie.
Do you want to talk about those monsters?
The Reapers, I believe they're called. Yeah.
Is that what they're called?
Yeah, I did have to look it up because I don't think it's actually said in the episode.
I think it's a very cool concept. I think it's a very smart concept. The idea of kind of when there's a rift in time, they are able to kind of come in almost like bacteria into an open wound and destroy things.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's something totally original to the show. I might be entirely wrong in this, but I think there's a Stephen King story which has a similar monster.
Okay.
But I think even if so, the context which they're used here adds a lot to them.
Yeah,
And
because the
it's a
original
very
plan was
kind
to
of
have
threatening.
them. Sorry, go on.
And it's got a very threatening design as well. I guess the problem is that it really it's that, it's the 2005 BBC CGI.
No, definitely, yeah. I know that they were originally meant to look like the Grim Reaper, that it was going to look like Grim Reapers walking around. But apparently they
Like
didn't
in a
go with
costume.
that. Sorry?
Like a costume.
Yeah. But apparently they didn't go with that because it looked too much like the repeated meme from End of the World. You know, the black cloaked.
Oh yeah, were they robots? The repeated meme?
I think
Yeah.
they were, weren't they? Or they were they were revealed to be something at the end, weren't they? They were working with Cassandra.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's some kind of decoys, yeah.
What was the whole Watson come here, I need you thing about?
The doctor said that was a recording of the first ever telephone call that was made. And so I guess the implication is that because time has been messed with so many ways and it's such a vulnerable place, kind of things are falling apart a little bit. And one of the artifacts of his phone's not being able to work, and all you're getting is that phone call.
It was a slightly strange inclusion, I thought. When it came up, I was like, oh, I'm going to start paying attention now. Because, we're dealing with multiple time zones. Then towards the end of the episode, I was like, what was that?
Yeah, it would be interesting if this was a concept that was kind of revisited, if someone messed with a point in time which shouldn't be messed with, and that you kind of started to see more out-of-time things slipping through the cracks.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. I'm glad the father of the groom got murdered. He was a bit of a dick, wasn't he?
I mean, didn't they all come back at the end anyway?
Yeah, that was a shame. I feel like it was maybe a warning. But he was like, you shouldn't marry her. She's like trouble. She's always been in trouble. She'd curse. It's not too late to walk out.
I mean, they seemed quite happy together.
Oh, they seemed really happy.
He's about the father.
I did write the groom comes across as a really great character. Like that scene where he goes up to the doctor and he's like, no, listen, it's the phone. Listen to the phone.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, my dad's dead, but I'll mourn him later, sort of thing.
Yeah. With what little screen time the bride and groom get, kind of the scene that they have is done really well. And it's kind of quite lovely the way how the Ninth Doctor is kind of gets so caught up in the story of how they first met.
Yeah.
And kind of how, even though he's kind of in a sense looking from above as kind of like this alien Time Lord, he is very kind of taken with kind of the simple human pleasures of meeting out on a night out and getting a taxi ride home.
Yeah, because he says, I've never been able to do that.
Finding that so endearing then makes him very endearing.
Yeah, no, I really did enjoy that. Rose, even though, I said at the start, Rose is a good companion, but when she does mess up, it's something big. She was told repetitively not to touch that baby.
Oh, yeah. Then when Pete passes it to her, she's just like quite...
She just sits there, doesn't she?
Yeah, without thinking she could have sidled up the bench.
Yeah.
She could have said, I shouldn't touch that, but...
Because they know at that point, Pete knows at that point that Rose is his daughter, so it wouldn't have been out of the question for her to go, by the way, I shouldn't touch the baby because we will both die.
Yeah.
How did the Doctor and Rose get into Pete and Jackie's wedding?
Pardon?
How did the Doctor and Rose get into Pete and Jackie's wedding at the start of the episode without them really noticing?
Well, Rose to kind of cover her back tells Pete that she's a guest at the wedding.
No, I mean,
in terms
at Pete and Jackie's wedding, when we see them get married at the start of the episode.
Oh, Pete. Yeah, that's a question. I haven't thought about. I mean, it's a fun scene. It's a cute scene. I'm glad that scene is kind of in it to kind of establish that even Pete and Jackie's wedding day isn't kind of like this perfect fairy tale wedding.
Yeah, he gets the name wrong.
But yeah, it does kind of beg the question how they got there.
Yeah.
Maybe we just like parked the TARDIS inside the building and then just casually walked in and grabbed a seat at the back.
I think we're forgetting one massive character from the episode that has gone unsung for far too long, and that is baby Mickey Smith.
Oh yeah, little. Is it like 5? Little 5.
Oh, this is what I wanted to bring up. I was under the impression from episode 1, where Rose starts with Mickey and Rose sat in London eating chips and messing around, that the two of them are the same age and both 19.
Yeah.
In Father's Day, I would say Rose isn't even 2.
No, I think she's at the very most, she's 1.
But Mickey can talk and run, and he's been to the park.
So Mickey's about 4 or 5. 4 at the youngest.
Yeah. So
that's at least a 3-year gap between them.
Yeah, so when she's 19, he's 20, 21, 22.
Okay.
Which is acceptable. But how long has Rose been... How long have they been dating?
Yeah, and it's a question of how they'd meet, because they didn't go to university. As established, they didn't go to university. Like, Rose didn't even do A-levels.
Yeah, I was going to say, they might meet each other at A-levels, but even then, you're not mingling with people 3 year groups above you.
I can't imagine they would have really known each other.
Oh, it's so obvious how they know each other. Their families are clearly friends. They went to the same wedding.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's the only way that I can think that, like, they get to know each other. But it wouldn't be until, like, they were a bit older that they kind of notice each other in that way.
No, yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So,
it's perfectly...
Go on.
I mean, it's a perfectly believable... I've known much more drastic age gaps that people have had relationships in.
Yeah, because your mum's... How old's your mum? 62, and your dad's only just turned 19, hasn't he?
I think you're gonna have to rethink the timeline on that, Tim.
Anything else? Okay, so out of what we established last week as a scale of fantastic to why won't you just die? What?
Well, I only have 3 marks for that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and number 2 is get me out, get me out.
Okay.
I still need to figure out 3 through to 9.
Okay. So whereabouts are you rating this?
I'm rating this an 8 or 9.
Oh, wow. So really high. The highest we've had.
Is it the highest we've had?
I believe so, yeah. I don't think we weren't doing this rating system for Dalek. But
we didn't rank Dalek. Dalek could very well be a 10 for me.
Okay, so Dalek still comes before this.
I think so. I had to think about it because this episode, for me, it was a very... I was surprised by just quite how emotionally charged it was and just how caught up I was in it, kind of on an emotional level.
Yeah.
And I think, especially towards the end, like the bit right before Pete runs out to the car, like he says goodbye to Jackie and gives out that really passionate kiss and hugs Rose and says how grateful he is for all those extra hours. That really got to me. I could feel my eyes getting a little bit damp,
Yeah, this was the first time in a long time of re-watching Doctor that I felt I could feel a lump coming in my throat as they were saying their goodbyes at the end.
Yeah, and it moved me. And because of that, for a while while watching it, I was torn thinking, is this better than Dalek? Do I like this more than Dalek? I feel like there's still a lot in Dalek that just I'm so passionate about, and I will find an opportunity to talk about. Lay it down why. I feel like this is definitely my second favorite episode of the series, at least. At least my
Great.
second favorite
Well,
so far.
It may be your second, but it is Christopher Eccleston's favorite.
Really?
This
Why
is his
did
favorite episode. At conventions and stuff, he was saying it's tradition to have an episode that is Doctor Light. So it gives the audience a break from the Doctor and it gives the actor a break. And I'm not sure if they still do that, but he said,
They do, yeah.
Yeah, at the time of recording this, he had gone away to go and see his father, who was, I haven't read his book, but I know from interviews with Chris that his father has Alzheimer's. So that he had gone away to spend time with his father. I'm not sure if his father was passing away at this point or, I don't know the details, but he had gone away to spend time with his father and then came back to the set of Father's Day where it's about Rose getting to know her father. And he said it's one of those episodes that just, when he looks back at the time of filming it, it's one of his favourite ones to, like the memories of that episode and filming it are quite significant.
Yeah, cool.
Cool. Right. Sorry, go
that's
on.
Interesting. I didn't realize that. I didn't realize this was the Doctor Light episode because I know of episodes such as
Blink,
Love and Monsters and Blink, and I can't remember what the series 4 one is, but I know it is kind of a
10 left.
Definitely oh yeah, 10 left. Yeah. I know that it is quite I didn't realize because I've always kind of thought back to series 1 and I could never figure out which episode was the episode where they had to work around the main actor's rehearsal schedule, which one was the one where they had a limited budget, which episode was the Doctor Light. And I guess this really is the one. You don't really think about it.
All one location, really, isn't it? I feel like it's maybe classed as the Doctor Light one because I imagine a lot of Chris's scenes could have been filmed in, 3 days.
Yeah.
Whereas
it's not
Billy's
something you
might
really
take
think
a bit longer.
Yeah. I didn't really consider it Doctor Light because the Doctor's only really out of the picture for like that very final bit in the third act. But really, when you think about it, there are a lot of scenes where while he's, the Doctor's in the story, he's not on screen. So, yeah, it's very clever in that sense. I didn't really think about that.
Yeah, cool. Anything else? That's everything, Harry. Next segment is a segment I haven't warned you about.
Oh, is this a different segment to last week's segment?
Yeah, we're going to do the recommendations in case you've got a recommendation. But I have a new segment, and I've cleverly called it Quiz.
You, not me. I hate being patient. Patience is for wimps.
Oh, wait, what? Quiz? Why is that clever?
I've got 3 questions here about the episode Father's Day. I want to know how much attention you were paying to the episode.
Oh, okay.
They're all plot points, so they're not behind the scenes stuff.
All right, so just from watching the episode, I'll know the answers.
Yes. When the Doctor and
brilliant.
Rose are stood watching Pete jump in front of a car, when he steps out in front of the car, there is a poster behind him and it says, "No third term for who?"
Thatcher.
Yes.
Another bit of clever, subtle 80s world building.
Yes. What is Jackie Tyler's maiden name?
I'm gonna have to guess this one. Jackie Apples and Pears.
I believe it's pronounced Prentice. Prntise.
Oh, of course it is.
So I
of
didn't get
course
that
it
one
is.
right. That's embarrassing. Okay, final question. There's only the 3. What date was Pete Tyler born?
Did they mention his birthday?
Yeah, right at the start, Rose, when she's doing her opening monologue, she says, "My father, Pete Tyler, born." What year?
April 19th.
Pick a year.
19 52.
Oh,
57.
surplus! 1954.
What was the? Did he? Oh, was it only a year?
No, pick the month. Can you get a point for the month?
April 19th. I don't know.
The 15th of September. So in a
Heck.
couple of days, in a couple of days from recording this, 14 days. It's a big man's birthday.
We're gonna make sure to make a tweet. Happy birthday to Pete Tyler.
I'll just write that down. That's a good idea. Sweet PT birthday. Yeah, so you got 1 out of 3. Well done.
Yay!
What's the point in having you all?
Now we can go back onto the segment I think you're more familiar with, which is recommendations, where as much as me and Harry like talking about Doctor Who, we do sometimes talk about other things. Do you want to what you recommending this week, Harry?
What I'm going to recommend is something I think I've brought up before in the podcast. It's not an easy find. I'll admit I had to specially find it on DVD and get it ordered to me. I got it as a birthday present last year. But if you can find it, it's well worth a watch, which is The Second Coming.
Yes.
It's a short series. I think it's just 2 parts from the 90s. It's a British drama written by the Doctor Who showrunner, which we are currently looking at, Russell T Davies, and it stars in the Ninth Doctor himself, Christopher Eccleston, as...
My goodness.
Yeah.
What more could you want?
Yeah. And it's a very interesting premise, almost kind of a precursor to him playing the Doctor, where he plays a northern working class guy, just a regular guy, and one day he just walks out into the countryside, and he's lost for several days. I can't remember the exact amount, but it's the same as Jesus wandered in a desert, I think. And then when he's found, he realizes that he's the son of God and he can perform miracles. And it's just about him delivering this message to the world and how the world responds to that, including people who are close to him, kind of world leaders, the news. It's a very involved piece. The world building that it does and how people react feels very kind of truthful, and it's one of Russell T Davies' strengths, in my opinion. And everyone, including Eccleston, delivers a great performance. And also, someone else from Doctor Who. What's the name of the guy that Rose sees?
I knew you were going to ask me that.
Yeah.
His name is Mark Benson.
Mark Benson, he also plays one of the key roles in The Second Coming. I won't give away what he does if you're lucky enough to find it, but he is also brilliant in the show. It's a short but very sweet 2-part series. I imagine you'll be able to find it secondhand on DVD fairly
there's quite
easily.
a few copies on eBay when I last looked.
Yeah. But it's well worth a look into, well worth watching if you're a fan of Russell T Davies, if you're a fan of his era of Doctor Who, and you kind of want to see kind of almost a precursor to this first series.
Yeah.
And a bit of context for it.
Awesome sauce. That sounds so... It sounds like all the children are smiling at once. Anyway, my recommendation... Sorry?
Is that a Doctor Who quote?
No? Yeah, it might be actually. I don't know, maybe. It sounds like something
Capaldi would say.
Yeah. My recommendation...
It sounds like all the children are smiling at once, Clara.
My recommendation is the April 2019 to it will be September 2020 run of Shazam DC Comics. If you follow me on Twitter at TimXSaxby, you'll know I do like my movies and I like my superheroes. That said, I don't read a lot of comic book stories. I own, the ones I have to own, The Killing Joke, The Long Halloween, a couple of Justice League ones, but it's very rare do I actually go out and buy the comic book, the slightly smaller, about A5 size, I think they are now, comic book stories. The Shazam ones are really, really good fun for someone. If you're looking to get into comics, I definitely recommend them because they're fun, they're lighthearted. You don't need to know practically anything about Shazam. You don't have to have seen the movies, you don't have to have seen any of the other comics. You can just start reading it, and they're really good. There's casual appearances from other DC heroes in there. I won't spoil any to whet your whistle. But they're really good, and they're unfortunately coming to an end this month with their 14th issue, I think. So yeah, definitely recommend people go read them.
That sounds great. I do need to get into more comics. I've only read a couple of Stan Lee Spider-Mans, but I kind of really need to broaden my horizons. Yeah,
same here. Like I'm looking up now at my comic collection that I've brought with me, and I have the Back to the Future comics, Batman: The Long Halloween, Justice League, Throne of Atlantis, Fight Club 2, and Batman: The Killing Joke. So I basically own the ones I should own.
right.
But that's it.
One thing I really want to get around to is Watchmen, which is by Alan Moore, who also did Killing Joke.
Yes, same here, yeah.
I've heard kind of lots of people kind of say it's one of, if not the greatest comic/graphic novel made. So that's something I'm going to look into. Maybe one of these weeks I'll say I recommend Watchmen.
Maybe he will. Okay, well, we'll wrap it up. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do. You can go to Twitter and just type in with your fingers at Bigger on the Pod. We're on YouTube, Bigger on the Inside Podcast. Acast, you can listen to the show at shows.acast.com/Bigger on the Inside. Yes, I am reading this from a piece of paper. You can leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or even send us a good old-timey email at biggerontheinsidepod@gmail.com. How exciting does all that sound, Harry?
It sounds incredibly exciting. I'm going to go and do all of those things immediately.
And we already do have one 5-star review, but don't believe what you hear because I didn't write it.
Do we actually have a review?
Yeah, it's me.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. Every time I get a notification for a YouTube video, I click on and like it.
Oh, did you? Oh, there we go. And you should too. And if you're not doing that at home, we'd have time for you. So saying that, if you've listened this
to be fair, I don't actually. I'm gonna let you in on a little insider secret. Most of the videos I don't actually listen to because I hate the sound of my voice.
Same. I hate your voice as well.
There's only the 2-minute bits, like the little 2-minute ones, the 3-minute ones. I actually quite enjoy because I can bear the sound of my voice for that long.
Should we briefly talk about something maybe we wouldn't recommend this week?
Do you want to talk about the film that's going to save cinema?
Tenet, yeah, we can talk about. We'll talk about it briefly because I know people tune in for Doctor Who stuff if they do tune in.
It's sci-fi.
But me and Harry went and saw Tenet or Tenant or Teen-E-T or Tenetinet, whatever it's called.
I think it's just Tenet.
Yeah, I know maybe sound like we're being a bit harsh, and I do maybe feel our cinema experience was slightly, was already tinted badly by the fact that the cinema almost closed down as we were watching the first screening. But
when the film started, the film was like flashing like red and blue, and at first we thought it was some kind of like stylistic thing that like no one was going for some kind of like deliberately glitchy opening crawl. Yes. But then the film started and it was still happening.
Yeah, we got a good 5 minutes into the film before someone at the cinema stopped it and went, "Yeah, you're not going to be watching Tenet tonight."
I mean, we got to see it eventually.
Yeah, we snuck into another screen and we saw it in there. I'm glad we didn't pay for it. I wasn't very excited by it, unfortunately. And
they gave us tickets for another free screening, which was very nice.
Yeah,
nice compensation.
I really hate not enjoying a film because I really want to enjoy all the films I watch.
Yeah.
It's really rare I come out of the cinema and go, that was not very good.
Yeah, and it's tough. When you go into a film and when you go to the effort of going to a venue to watch something, I do want to enjoy it, I want to have a good time, but unfortunately for Tenet, it felt like an uphill battle.
Yeah.
And I hate to say that. And I'm sure I can identify, and I know there are people who've really loved this movie, and I can see why. Like, the concept is like cool. They do some cool stuff with it. Some of the action scenes really kind of lean into that kind of technical spectacle where if you it to think how did they pull that off,
Yeah.
I wouldn't even begin to be able to explain about seeing a few behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Um,
I feel like
I
maybe
think-
that's why. If you enjoy Tenet, I'm not saying you shouldn't enjoy it. You can like what you like, and that's totally up to you. But I maybe do feel that some people think they like the film when what actually they like is they like the visual style of the film and they like seeing the buildings on the screen fall apart and realign.
And that's, if that's what you want to see films for, that's perfectly fine. Like, I'll admit, like, I love the Mission Impossible series, and the reason that I love those movies is because Tom Cruise does these insane ball to the walls kind of stunts.
Yeah.
I feel like, though, for me, where Tenet didn't work for me was in the way that it delivered exposition and progressed the story, which I think this is quite often for Christopher Nolan, that a lot of the dialogue exchanges are very expository.
Yeah.
And especially with this film, they are dumping a lot on you.
It's
can
like
be quite
big action scene,
overwhelming.
big action scene, big action scene, sitting in a cafe for 10 minutes while we have a conversation about what just happened. Big action scene, big action scene, big action scene. Two people walking past a church while they explain what happens. Amazing action scene with a car. Talking, then just two people talking in a shipping container for 10 minutes.
Yeah, and that didn't work for me. And I think the other thing that didn't work for me was, and I don't know whether or not this was deliberate or not, but the characterization felt very kind of by the numbers. Like,
yes,
all the main players felt like quite kind of explicitly obvious tropes, to the extent that the main character doesn't have a name, but just called the protagonist.
Yeah.
And then the female lead, for a lot of the film, feels like they're occupying this kind of damsel that needs rescuing role. And then the bad guy, played by Kenneth Branagh, is quite a, it's nothing you haven't seen before. This international weapons warlord profiteer.
Yeah. One problem that I really had with the movie, and I spoke about it online, was the characterization of the film's one and only female lead. I felt she had some good action points, but when she wasn't doing anything, she was either just a damsel in distress, and the slight spoilers, I guess. I won't go into the context, but her only action scene is in the last 10 minutes of the film, and it is done in the wet, in her wearing a loose-fitting shirt and a white bikini. And I sort of felt, and I expected more from Christopher Nolan in that regard. I was like, it's a bit weird.
I mean, it's a shame because you can tell, like, even despite it, you can tell that these are all very talented actors that he's got. And there are parts where it shines, like the protagonist and Robert Pattinson's character, they both are obviously very charismatic, and there are a couple of exchanges of dialogue between them where you can feel they're brushing on that chemistry.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, it never quite hits the mark the way I wanted it to.
He was good though, Robert Pattinson. I felt he was, for me anyway, he was the saving grace of this movie. Yeah. And
looking forward to him making a career comeback with let's say, vengeance.
Twilight Reborn. I cannot wait. Anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway.
The whole gang's back. Taylor Lautner, Christian Stewart. And this time, it's personal.
So you can come back and listen to us next week where we won't talk about Tenet. We will only be talking about episode... Are we doing episode 9 and 10 together?
I think it makes sense.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll be talking about episode 9 and 10, which are called What, Harry?
The Empty Child and The Doctor Dances, both written by the now quite well-known and quite renowned Stephen Moffat.
Woohoo! So come and listen to that next week if you like. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye from me. Say bye, Harry!
Bye-bye!
Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official
Bigger on the Inside podcast.